It is 6 p.m. I will call this February 25th, 2020 meeting of the Montgomery County, Miami Township Board of Trustees to order. Please join me in standing in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Morris.
Here.
Mr. Culp.
Here.
Mr. Posey.
Here.
We begin every meeting with the reading of the casualties. Mr. Posey, will you please read the military casualties?
Thank you. We have 3 casualties to discuss today. The first casualty is Army Sergeant First Class Antonio R. Rodriguez, participating in Operations Freedom's Sentinel, assigned to the 3rd Battalion, 7th Special Forces Group out of Eglin Air Force Base, Florida, passed on February 8th, 2020, at age 28 from Las Cruces, New Mexico. The second is Army Sergeant First Class Javier J. Gutierrez, again participating in Operation Freedom Sentinel, passed on February 8th, 2020. He was 28 years old, of Jacksonville, Florida, and assigned to the 3rd Battalion, 7th Special Forces Group out of Eglin Air Force Base, Florida. The third is Army Specialist Brandon Time Kimball, again participating in Operation Freedom Sentinel, passed on February 12, 2020. He was 21 years old, from Central Point, Oregon, and assigned to the 3rd Battalion, 10th Aviation Regiment, 10th Combat Aviation Brigade out of Fort Drum, New York.
Captain McGill.
Thank you. I have the first responder casualties for the period February 10th, 2020 through February 25th, 2020. Police Officer Kenneth Reed Lester, Richmond Police Department, Indiana, in a watch, February 10th, 2020. Deputy Sheriff Donna Richardson Below, DeSoto Parish Sheriff's Office, Louisiana, end of watch, February 12th, 2020. K-9 Hondo, Harriman City Police Department, Utah, end of watch, February 13th, 2020. Lieutenant Shirley Lanning, Canadian County Sheriff's Office, Oklahoma, end of watch, February 14th, 2020. Officer David Kellywood, White Mountain Apache Tribal Police Department, Tribal Police, end of watch, February 17th, 2020. Captain Raymond Figueroa, Porterville Fire Department, Porterville, California, end of watch, February 18th, 2020. Firefighter Patrick Jones, Porterville Fire Department, Porterville, California, end of watch, February 18th, 2020. Corporal Andrew Gillette, age 37, Sumter County Sheriff's Office, South Carolina, end of watch, February 25th, 2020.
If everyone would please join me in observing a moment of silence. Thank you. I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion?
Mr. Morris.
Aye.
Mr. Culp.
Aye.
Mr. Posey.
Aye.
We'll welcome all the guests, and we have no presentation scheduled, but just a reminder, if you're here to speak to the Board of Trustees, we do have a public comment period, which will be upcoming. But if you're here specifically to talk about the public hearing, the zoning case, please hold your comments until we have public comments during the zoning case. So everyone is welcome to give comments during the public period, but if you're here specifically for the zoning case, please save those comments until that case has been opened, and then you will be called forward. Mr. Mayberry, you have some business regarding Resolution 23.
Yes, sir, I do. One item I have tonight is a resolution and an accompanying agreement. This is in relation to the 2020 resurfacing program for Miami Township. We are working in conjunction with the city of Miamisburg this year This mutual agreement will hopefully lead to mutual savings for both jurisdictions, and I do appreciate the cooperative efforts with the city of Miamisburg.
How does this vary from what we've done in the past?
Every other year in the past, we've participated under Montgomery County Engineers Office program. They have made some changes to their program in recent years. The biggest change is they require the entire estimated amount be deposited to Montgomery County in November of the prior year if it's anticipated that there's over $100,000 of work. So we usually exceed that number quite easily yearly. So, one of the reasons why I've reached out to Miamisburg this year and asked if they would be interested in this joint participation. And for Miamisburg's program, we will reimburse Miamisburg for Miami Township's portion after the completion of the program. So after the work's completed, they'll issue us a invoice, and then we'll pay that invoice within 30 days.
Excellent. Does anyone
Thank
else
you.
have any questions? Thank you. We will now open the public comments period. Anybody wishing to come forward and make a public comment, please come forward, state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes. Mr. Newell? Do we have anybody who's filled out a card?
No, this is just the Rivendell.
Okay. Anyone wishing to make a comment other than on the zoning case? Seeing none, we will close the public comment period, and I will make a motion to approve Resolution 023-2020.
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion?
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Culp?
Aye.
Mr. Posey?
Aye.
I guess I should go back and read the resolution. I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 023-2020, a resolution to authorize the Township Administrator to enter into an agreement for joint participation in the asphalt paving program agreement with the City of Miamisburg for the resurfacing of township streets. Now for be it resolved, the Board of Trustees of Miami Township, Montgomery County, Sections 1, 2, 3, and 4, which we've already approved. All right, we will jump into our zoning case. I will make a motion to open a public hearing for zoning case 024-2020.
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion?
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Culp?
Aye.
Mr. Posey?
Aye.
Zoning case 024-2020 is now open. The following will be the order in which the hearing will proceed. Staff will give a report. All proponents will be able to speak. All opponents will be given an opportunity to speak. A time limit of 3 minutes will be placed on each of the speakers. Please give your name and address for the record when coming forward. The board will close the public hearing prior to taking any final action. The board will now hear the report of staff. Mr. Hinkleman, have the legal requirements of this hearing been met?
They have.
Do you have a recommendation from the Miami Township Zoning Commission, and would you please review your report at this time?
I do. Thank you very much. The case before you this evening is ZC 393-07, Rivendell, a planned development regulation amendment. So before we get into that, I guess I would like to note very clearly the case that is before you is the same substantial case that was brought before you in the past. The change in title, the Plan Development Regulation Amendment, is due to the changes that we made to our zoning resolution in 2019, which this process was created under those changes. So although it is similar to what a major modification to the preliminary development plan was in the past, that is now called a Plan Development Regulation Amendment, which is what is before you this evening. With that said, zoning case 393-07 is the proposed modifications to the existing PD1 planned residential district titled Rivendell. This location is about almost 32 acres. It is adjacent to an existing farm field and the Vienna Park neighborhood. The applicant is proposing the development occur in either 2 or 3 phases, which we will discuss here in a moment. Just to go back a little bit and state what is currently approved on the site, the image to your left is the image that was approved, or the site plan that was approved in 2007. You will note that it has one access point, which is Rosecliff. It does not have the access point that is Fox Run that is being proposed. Then you'll see the proposed new site plan on the right, which does show 82 lots, as well as modified setbacks, but the same side yard setbacks. We will discuss those in greater depth here in a moment. As I noted, the applicant is proposing either 2 or 3 phases. If the applicant were to propose 2 or were to move forward with 2 phases, you can see there are 41 lots in the first phase and 41 lots in the second phase. You would also note that both access points would go in as part of phase 1. As part of the discussion that has occurred with the fire district, there is a requirement for any, if there is a development of more than 30 homes, that there be 2 access points provided. So if the applicant were to provide a phased with 3 phases that does not include the second access point, as you'll note, phase 1 is not going to exceed 30 homes. That is due to the fact that the fire district, again, would require, if you go over 30 homes per phase, you'd be required 2 access points. So as you'll note as well, the applicant has provided a date of March 2021 as their start date, and then July 2022 as the start date of the second phase if it were 2-phased. Then they've provided that same March 2021 for the first phase, March 2022 for the second phase, and March 2023 for the third phase if they were to 3-phase the development. Again, I just wanted to note the access points that are being proposed. The applicant is proposing an access point off of Rosecliff as well as off of Fox Run Road. Again, I noted those multiple phases. If it were 3 phases, those access points would be going in at different times, potentially 1 year apart. As for the plan that is before you this evening, they are proposing, again, that breakdown, whether it's 41 lots in the first phase and 41 in the second phase, or 28, 28, 26, if it were in their 3-phase development. They're also proposing 3 detention ponds. They are proposing a number of public roads, as well as those 82 lots, which are spread out from the smallest being 0.21 acres to some of the larger ones being a little over 0.5 acres. I will note the names of the road are not finalized. As we've gone through this process, Montgomery County has made it clear that they believe these road names are acceptable, but as this plan went forward originally in 2007, we would have to confirm that there are no road names that have existed in that time and that these names would be acceptable. We do believe that they will be, but I don't want to state 100% that these road names would be the final road name. They are up for final determination by Montgomery County. As for the density of the development, just to give you some context, an R2 allows for 0.34, and R3 allows for 0.23, and then Rivendell, again, the smallest is 0.21, which is smaller than both of those. You can also see the chart that is provided that shows the lot frontages as well as the setback requirements. What I would note on the other side of that is by those frontages and those setbacks, if you were in a standard zoning district, you likely could fit 60 to 66 lots depending on where the roadways were designed. So it's based on frontage, so you could potentially get 60 to 66 lots. So that is less than what is being requested under the PD. I note that just to say, due to it being in the PD, there are requirements on it that would not exist if it were outside of the PD. Namely, the fact that the building materials are regulated, the sidewalk regulations, the landscape regulations, as well as the open space and preserved tree regulations that we will note here in a moment as well. I just say that to say, again, the applicant is modifying an existing PD, so that is why the standards are in place and what they are requesting this evening is the change to the overall site plan as well as those standards. When we worked with the applicant throughout this process to get to today and bring this plan before you, the Zoning Commission has reviewed this, and this board, as well as the Zoning Commission, has seen a version of this a number of times over the last 3 years. What the changes are between the plan that happened before and the plan that the applicant presented today, I would just note the focus has always been on 4 overall concepts. The traffic or the traffic generation of the development, the building materials or the construction of the homes and the model types, the density of the development, and then water. So I will note a couple of those items as we work through these. If you have questions on any of those or additional topics, please stop me and I'd be happy to address them as we go forward. With that said, the largest change between the plan that is before you this evening and the plan that was reviewed 2 years ago is that the access points are the same, but Vienna Parkway is on its way to being completed in 2020 in the fall. As the discussions went forward with this plan, as well as the discussions for the overall access for the 82 homes to be able to utilize 741 north and south. The access on Vienna Parkway is a substantial change from what was reviewed by Montgomery County Engineers Office previously. A lot of the numbers that were provided through the Engineers Office assumed that the traffic that was generated by this development would utilize Rosecliff North, then Pine Grove, and then Silver Cliff to get to 741. Obviously, the large change there is now that Vienna Parkway will be completed. It is likely that a substantial portion of any of that traffic will now just utilize Vienna Parkway to access 741 moving north and south. The traffic counts and the construction traffic and development traffic generation that you see within your packets are the same numbers that were provided previously. The applicant has not estimated any changes to any of those numbers. And again, as I noted here, just for your context, again, Rivendell and its location, the access to Vienna Parkway and then Vienna Parkway to 741 now with the connection that is again proposed, is to be completed in fall of 2020. As you can see again in your packets, there were traffic volumes that were created as part of the development. The generation of traffic was reviewed by the Montgomery County Engineers Office, and they did state they do believe that Rosecliff and Fox Run Road both are adequate in terms of their size to accommodate the additional proposed traffic or potential traffic that is created by the development. They also stated a traffic impact study is not required based on the size of the development and the potential traffic generation numbers. Just to give you some context so you can understand other developments within our community that are somewhat similar, we have a development called Keystone Club that is off of Lamb Road. This development has one access point in. It has 81 single-family lots that are 29-foot roadway width, which is the same as Rosecliff. That single access point serves the entire community. If that were to be built today, the fire code would not permit that single access, but again, this has been approved in the past, and that neighborhood does not receive complaints for any specific items that we're generally aware of. Another comment just to note, or another location just to note is Bellsburg. This is 101 single-family lots. The roadway is actually smaller than the roadways that are around the proposed Rivendell at 27 feet. They also have a single access point which goes to Mohawk Trail. It's Bellsburg. They have a number of dead-end roads that potentially in the future, if there were to be development in the city of Miamisburg, they could connect into that development. But as of today, and as it has been for over 20 years, it is a single access point for 101 single-family lots with a 27-foot roadway and no sidewalks. I did want to note parking as well. An initial conversation that was had with the applicant, and as we've worked through this, is to try to limit the need for cars to be parked on the roadway. I would note these are public roads, so it is likely that there will be cars or the ability for cars to be parked on the roadway. But working with the applicant, the standards for setbacks in the front were extended to have it be 25 feet to allow the potential for what is 2 to 4 cars in your front driveway, as well as a 2-car garage. So the idea would be that you wouldn't be forced to have on-street parking, or if you had a family, you wouldn't have to be on-street. But there is still potential for on-street parking as well, but we've accommodated additional parking on the private lot. If you'd like to note the landscaping, the property in green that you can see is what we would consider open space. You can note that that does include the 3 detention, the 3 detention basins, as well as on the southern part of the lot, which is to your left. You'll see that there is a larger open space. A change from the previous plan, as we've worked with the applicant, is the reduction in the public road infrastructure. So you will see that both of the roads to the north, to the west of the site, are now cul-de-sacs. That has removed a substantial amount of public roadway in between those cul-de-sacs, which has allowed for some of that area to be protected at a greater level for what is potentially trails and trees around another pond feature on the south side of that site. I will note as well, you can see that it bands around the site. The applicant is proposing 25-foot and 35-foot buffers to meet the requirements that are put upon it and being in the PD1 standards. There also is on each lot individual models. They have landscaping that is provided, and you'll see that in your plan. Obviously, individual homeowners would have the right to plant additional landscaping beyond what would initially be planted as well. Then you can see the rough trail. This is not where the trail is going to be, but as working through this process with the applicant, we have pushed to have additional trails constructed to have that area on the south side be more of a nature area and allow for more utilization by the neighborhood to be able to walk or bike or just have a connection with that wooded area and have it be protected. That southern wooded area also has a couple streams in it, so it's very likely they will be protected, as the applicant does not have an interest in affecting streams. They're not required to. There's permits and EPA requirements for that. I would note, though, that as the final development plan comes forward, we would just ask if the board does consider approving this, that we have a tree study completed for the existing trees, and we work to save as many trees as we can to create a larger tree environment or a canopy that exists. If there's a potential to save those trees, instead of clear cutting the whole site and then planting back a small tree that would take 40 years to grow back, if there is an ability to save those trees along that pathway, we'd like to do that. But if there's not, then we'd like to add additional landscaping around that trail to make sure that over time, someday, it will have kind of that environment. These are photos which are within your packets as well, but the staff went out in 2018 and took photos of the existing trees that were on site, just to show you again that it is not just scrub brush. There are some somewhat substantial trees, a lot of younger trees that certainly would continue to grow if protected. I also wanted to note signage within the development. The applicant is proposing an entry sign at both the Rosecliff and Fox Run intersection with the existing roadways. They are also proposing signage within the development for sale signs, for model open house signs. Those temporary signs, the for sale signs and the model signs, would obviously only be there for the time that is necessary when they're for sale or when they have one model home. But those monument signs would be constructed and maintained by their homeowners association. As for the elevations, the applicant has modified the applications they are requesting, or excuse me, the elevations they are requesting. The elevations that they were requesting previously were smaller. These 6 that are being proposed have an average square footage of about 1,800 square feet. The Aviano, Bramante, Cumberland, Palladio, Pisa Torre, and Savannah. The Pisa Torre and Aviano were both part of the original application. The other 4 are a change from what was requested previously. The square footages, which is the minimum square footage you see, are listed up there next to the elevation or the specific home model. I will note, as part of that, the applicant has provided within your packets as well elevation drawings for each model. The development standards that are within your packets will show that the recommendation or the standard that is before you is that the buildings be constructed 80% brick or stone on the entirety of the home. So that would be calculated if you took all 4 sides and you took the square footage of that and added it all together. 80% of that number would have to be brick or stone. So I say that just to make sure it's clear that by doing it that way and calculating it that way, there is a potential that the front facade, if they made the other 3 facades 100% brick or stone, that the front facade may only be 50, depending on the square footage and how the facade is broken up. But that gives the applicant the flexibility to build the craftsman-style homes that they are requesting, as well as keeping the neighborhood to match the existing or greater area with some of the brick and stone that is substantial in different locations. The other component to that is obviously the square footage of the homes. The development standards that were recommended to the Zoning Commission recommended that 1,600 square feet be the minimum, but we would permit there to be 8 homes that were less than that, so 10% of the lots could be built at smaller than that 1,600 square feet. There was a large discussion about square footage that we've had at previous meetings, and so that was the standard that staff brought forward. The Zoning Commission, as you'll see in your recommendation, recommended that that be 1,550, which accommodates, as you'll note, the Aviano, which is 1,566, which would allow then the applicant to build 5 of their 6 models with as many as they wanted, and then theoretically they could only build 8 of the Pisa Torre, which is below that 1,550 threshold that they requested. So you will see that the Zoning Commission is recommending that, which is lower than what staff recommended to the Zoning Commission. I will note, though, the development standards do still state that 1,400 square foot minimum, and I will also note that is livable space. That does not include the areas like a garage or a finished or an unfinished basement that, again, could add to the square footage of the home, but would not count towards the overall calculation of the home. Just to give you, again, some context to where that 1,600 square feet and where the 80% brick and stone came from, the average home on Mohawk Trail is about 2,500 square feet. The average home on Rosecliff is a different style of home, so it's not single family, it's an attached product, and that's more like 1,400 square feet to 1,800 square feet. So again, this area acts somewhat as the buffer between those 2 types of styles, and that's where that 1,600 square foot is reflected. You'll also note along Rosecliff and along Mohawk Trail, both of those home styles are substantially made of brick or stone. In this case, mainly brick, but that's why staff is recommending that 80%, again, because both of those home styles are substantially brick, and again, stone is another option that they could have. Getting to the fourth thought or fourth item that has been discussed at length, drainage and stormwater. The applicant, as they have done in the past, are providing a pre and post estimated stormwater proposal. What I would say, as we have done in the past, the requirement of the applicant to meet stormwater goes through Montgomery County Engineer's office. That engineering, the final formal engineering, occurs at the final development plan process. So at this time, the applicant is not required by our process to provide the engineering that is necessary to be able to state without a doubt whether they can or cannot do an item. What they are required to do in our code and what they are required, they've provided to the Zoning Commission and to the Board of Trustees is an estimate of what they are intending to do. There are requirements through EPA and through Montgomery County Engineer's Office for that stormwater management. Those ponds, the sizing of them, the amount of water runoff compared to before and after, all of those calculations will be reviewed and required to be met by Montgomery County Engineer's Office or the Environmental Protection Agency, OEPA. So I just state that to say, again, the applicant has provided the drainage and stormwater, although I am not able to tell you whether or not that is going to meet Montgomery County standards for certain. Montgomery County would have to do that review, that formal review at the final development plan process. I just would like to note that we did have Montgomery County do a cursory review just to be able to get an idea. And the noted area on the south, there is an unmitigated area where there could potentially be runoff. And they did state they would believe there is a likelihood there could be additional infrastructure necessary in that location, which would really be a pipe. That pipe, the size of it, whether there's multiple drains or things like that, I can't tell you what that would be. Our concern would be that if that were required, that the buffer area be, worked around to accommodate that, so we're not dealing with no trees or trees getting removed within that area. And again, I would note that will all be determined when this comes before you, whatever phase that is, whether that's 1 or 2, in the final development plan process. The applicant would be required to show all of the engineering and show exactly how they meet all those standards. So with that said, obviously the case before you is an 82-lot residential subdivision. They are requesting modifications to the building style, the building home overall development standards for the development. Currently, the development is permitted as a PD1. Their residential use and the subdivision is allowed under our code. The applicant has not brought that final development plan forward. I don't know whether or not that final development plan is approvable as it sits today based on the current codes. But this is what the applicant has applied to the township, what has gone through the zoning commission, and what is before you this evening. The zoning commission did hear this case a week ago, and they did recommend approval in a 5-0 vote. And their recommendation stated, the zoning commission finds that the proposed plan development regulation amendment complies with the standards of Article 31, Section 3104, and recommend approval of zoning case 39307, a plan development regulation amendment for the Rivendell planned unit development and for land zoned PD1 planned residential district with the following stipulations. 1, the development standards dated February 25th, 2020 be adopted as part of the approved and revised standards for the development. 2, the preliminary development plan be adopted. 3, the developer will construct any buffer with adjacent properties at the time each phase is constructed, speaking to staff's concern about clear cutting the entire property. And 4, the developer be permitted to construct 10% of the homes to be constructed under 1,550 square feet. And again, the zoning commission did recommend approval in a 5-0 vote. With that said, I know I went through a substantial amount of information somewhat quickly. If there is any specific portion of that you'd like me to comment on, I'm more than happy to do so, but there is a representative of the applicant here who can certainly speak to any questions you may have of them.
Any questions for Mr. Hinkleman? Just to clarify, I think you said it a couple of times, this is a preliminary development plan. a final development plan would have to come forward addressing the environmental issues and the final construction plans?
Correct. A final development plan involves all of the formal final engineering. The preliminary plan allows an applicant to move to that next stage, understanding that generally these are the bounds that they have to meet, but they're still going to have to meet the development standards and the final engineering. If it were to move forward, it would then go back through the final development plan process.
Thank you. Does the applicant want to address us? Say anything?
Good evening. My name is Jim Zengel. I live at 6362 Carls Ridge Drive, Dayton, Ohio, 45459. Thank you for your time this evening. I'm speaking to you as president of Zengel Construction, and as before, we are making the application as a developer. I had a lot of notes. I'm going to try to, it might get a little disjointed because Kyle hit most of them, and I don't want to repeat too many things. But I think the first thing I want to stress is that this was approved in 2007, and for those of you who've been up here a number of times and gone over this, in 2007 when this was approved, we had virtually no opposition that we've seen in these last two time frames with a development that was substantially different than where we are today. I think the couple of things that I want to reiterate once again is that with this new design, we have we've added more green space, we've added the walking trails, and we reduced the township maintenance that is required. I think Kyle hit the traffic very well, saying that Vienna Parkway's in, and Montgomery County has said that Rivendell design won't create any undue stress to the property. I think you can definitely see that if you think that there's 101 homes on Bellsburg going in and out there all the time, and then that the surrounding streets are capable of handling the traffic. He mentioned that the construction details, do you already have them? I'm not going to repeat them unless you would like me to specify. We've said them a number of times in here, but I will say a couple things about the development part of it. We've agreed and talked about it that we're going to walk the streets with the township before we get started, and after the development is done, if we see any damage or whatever, we'll take care of that. But I just want to stress, I don't believe that you're going to see any issues. I mean, we've done all the streets in Vienna Park over the years with ourselves and our development partners, and never has there been a street damaged or whatever. We've never been required to have that type of walkthrough before. But these roads will be, as were all the roads in Vienna Park, constructed and inspected in accordance to Montgomery County engineer standards. And I can also say from experience working with Ryan Holmes and another development that their street maintenance during construction is exceptional. They follow all the EPA requirements and have increased dramatically over the years, and they're very compliant or whatever with if there's an issue, if it's brought to their attention by either the township or residents, they take care of it. And as I worked as a developer, they were very quick to get with me to make sure that issues were resolved. Detention basins, I think a couple of things that originally we had 2 dry basins. New requirements today lend themselves better to use of the wet ponds. They can be smaller and promote better water quality. The dry basins are required to hold water for 48 hours in today's standards, creating long-term maintenance issues. The worst one being is they become mosquito breeding grounds because they're always wet on the bottom. Wet ponds require a bubbler or some type of water feature which is maintained by the association, and the county engineer prefers the wet ponds for their lower maintenance and their environmental benefits for better water quality. Addressing some of the unmanaged drainage on the east property line. When we constructed the properties along Mohawk Trail Road, so all the homes on the west side of Mohawk Trail Road that back up against this property, we installed 2 storm drains in there for future development to be able to tie into. We believe that those 2 storm pipes plus will allow us to put swales in the backyards of the houses on Rivendell, and connect those swales to these drains to eliminate the issues that the water that Kyle mentioned that are now possibly unmanaged. And I want to stress this, that the design cannot be, this water design cannot be completed without some kind of approved plan. And the plan cannot be created without your approval of phase 1. We've built 3 of these detention basins over the years, and they have virtually eliminated any water problems over the years that became of them. They've been requirements since the early 1980s. They've been cleaned up, they've been fixed if there's any problems they determined. There's been hundreds, maybe even thousands of them built in our area with no issues. I do know that the one that we put in has eliminated flooding issues along Eckley Boulevard, so they do work. And the other thing, we talk somewhat, there's been some confusion over the years of what we call buffer zones or setbacks. And Kyle mentioned the one drawing has the green area that you'll see a ribbon all the way around the property. So there's 25-foot setback or buffer zone on the east, west, and south property line. On the north property line, it's been increased to 35%. So along with this, there's a 25-foot rear setback on each of the homes. Those dimensions are added together. So the minimum distance between the back of a house and the property line on the east and west property lines is going to be 50 feet. The minimum distance between the back of the house and the property line on the north is 60 feet. The homes we built on Mohawk Trail and on Vienna Estates Drive have a 40-foot minimum setback. So we've increased the distance between the house and the property line by 10 foot or 20 foot. The approved plan had 30-foot distance between the back of the house, the minimum of 30 feet between the back of the house and the property line, 20 foot on the front yard, and 6 feet on the side yards. These buffer zones will be controlled by the association, and our plan when we're building that, when we build like the first section, let's say, we would do all the buffer zones in that area at the same time. We wouldn't go through and tear up other parts of the property and build those buffer zones until we start either the second phase or the third phase if we do 3 phases. Once again, those are all part of the final development plan, and they will work together in concert with the tree study that Kyle mentioned. So that's a requirement of phase 2 approval process. Once again, we need that to be able to move forward. And we try to save trees because the trees, if we have trees on the lot, they sell faster and the homes sell faster. So in closing, just reiterate a couple things, I guess. Many of these issues cannot be resolved without the zoning and the trustee approval. We received zoning last week. With phase 1 approval, we can complete the design for streets, drainage, sanitary and stormwater lines, to name just a few. The drawings and details will be designed by a private engineer. The engineer will seal the drawings with their license, thereby taking responsibility for the design. These plans will then be reviewed and approved by the Montgomery County Engineer's Office and the Montgomery County Water Services Department for the sewer and water lines. At phase 2 and the trustee meetings, at zoning and trustee meetings, there will be, all of these issues will be vetted once again. We're asking approval for phase 1 of Rivendell with 82 lots, 2 entrances, 3 detention ponds, and additional green space. Essentially what has been approved by the Zoning Commission 3 times. Once again, thank you for your time this evening, I'll be happy to answer any questions you have on the development part of it. Mark Locke behind me is going to get up here and speak on some of the home design. So if you have some questions for me, happy to answer, or
Any
later
questions for
on, or-
Mr. Zengel? I have one question. We had some residents expressing concerns if this is to be approved about truck routes of construction traffic coming in, knowing that these are public roads. We can't mandate where someone drives or cannot drive, but is it a general practice of the developer to advise and recommend routes that the contractors take coming in and out of this development?
We can certainly try to create something. We have always tried to do that in the past when we did things. But you have multiple drivers, let's say for a concrete truck, let's say, and you know, they got 40 guys, and you tell them they all come in, let's say from Vienna Parkway, so there's shorter distance on there. But there's always going to be somebody that does something different. And to say, can we guarantee it? No. But do we really try to stress that? Yes, we can. And we can work some of those designs or truck routes or whatever in the future here too.
Do you have a best guess on whether you're going to slice this into 2 pieces or 3? What would dictate how that happens?
I'll let Mark, because I mean, we're going to work with the developer, but I think he's got 2 or 3 people thinking, that working with us.
I can address that now. The whole reason this came up is the amount of homes or the velocity at which we believe we're going to be selling. To go in and put a 28-lot section in, Section 1, with the development build schedule that we have, because you can't put asphalt down during the winter months. We don't want to create a situation where we have a good kickoff, sell homes, and then sell all 28, and we're waiting for the weather to break and the asphalt plants to open. We've talked with several folks that would consider doing it in 2 sections. That way we get 41 lots. That way we can start selling. It's better to time it. If we start and sell, 10, 15, 20 in the first 90 days, which is what we believe our matrices are showing we'll do, that gives that developer enough time to plan to get back into you final development plans for that next section of lots so that they can be approved by the township, bid out, and constructed, so we don't totally run out of lots. That's one of the worst things for a builder, is to be in a development that's doing well and all of a sudden you totally run out of lots or product to market and sell.
Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate you both coming forward.
Yeah.
No, I think we're good.
I do just want to say one thing, as Jim had mentioned. I am Mark Locke, 884 Pleasant Valley Drive. I'm with NVR, Ryan Homes. I went back through my notes this morning, and I've been working this deal for almost 6 years. Now, I haven't been in front of the township for that long. It's been frustrating somewhat in the past, but I can honestly say I think where we are today, I think the plan has continually improved and gotten better, and a lot of that's in comments from the surrounding residents. Some of it, like the 2 cul-de-sacs, that was a direct comment from your staff of having to make that site better. So I think what we have before you this evening for your consideration is the best of what we have submitted as far as that's concerned. As Kyle said, this is kind of a transition between the property to the east and then the property to the north and west. One of the big discussions that he mentioned is, predominantly those homes are of basically brick. They didn't use stone. When these homes were built 20 plus years ago, the usage of stone really was not something that was considered. With this craftsman style of home, and I know you drive around, you see this, with the use of that stone on front elevations, it creates a architectural difficulty, because no one is going to put stone the full face on the sides of a house. It'll look like a medieval castle. Typically what's done when you put stone on the front of a home, you do what's called a water table, or you mirror that front water table. If we're doing brick on the fronts of the house, that material transition down the sides and rear of brick makes sense. But when you have a stone front and a brick side, architecturally, it doesn't generally create what you want it to do. I understand the surrounding houses, built over 20 plus years ago, are all brick, but there is no stone. And with stone being introduced, that's what I was trying to get in my conversation with the zoning commission. We'll do it. We'll do full stone or brick, and it won't be stone. We'll do full brick wrap on the sides and rear to meet that 80% requirement, but it doesn't give the architectural feel of that cottage elevation. It doesn't. And I just want to make that known that we had talked with staff of the possibility of having that reduced, primarily say, we're not going to use any vinyl as a siding material. In a lot of those cases, in other communities, we've got the cottage elevations where we don't do full brick on the sides. We either do nothing or a water table, and instead of vinyl, we use a branded name called Hardy Plank. It's a cementitious material. To us, aesthetically, it looks better, but from a costing standpoint, the house isn't going to cost any more or any less whether we do bricks on the sides and rear or Hardy Plank. There's going to be no difference in the cost. So it's just the material itself. I know zoning commission approved this 80% stone or brick. It's not going to be stone. We're not going to stone the sides and rear of a house. That would be a disservice to our customers. No one would choose to do that. So the sides and rear are all going to be brick. The difference is the front going to be stone and or brick. I would request that if we do brick and give people the option, we fight so hard to have different products, multiple products with different looks, different front elevation looks, that if the front of the house, if the customer chooses brick as their material, that we will wrap the sides and rear with brick. If it's stone that they choose for their front elevation, that we be permitted to tie in that stone on the front with a water table on the sides and rear of the home. I know that's a little bit different. And again, if that's too much, we'll do exactly what the staff's report suggested and what your zoning commission approved, which is the 80% requirement of stone and or brick. Again, it won't be stone. It will all be brick.
Thank you. Any
Thank you.
questions? No. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now open the public comment period. Anyone wishing to come forward as a proponent in favor of this plan, please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Tony Groshek, and I live at 2635 Vienna Estates Drive, Dayton, Ohio, 45459. I'm also the Vice President of the Board of Trustees of the Vienna Estates Homeowners Association. I'm going to read a statement on behalf of the Board of Trustees, not necessarily every homeowner in Vienna Estates. We know that these 32 acres of lands are valuable, too valuable to be left undeveloped. The right development could become a win-win-win. Profit for the developer, increased revenue for the township, and a boost to the property values for surrounding homeowners. In the ideal, we would have liked to have seen a development of custom brick homes by Zengel Construction with direct access to 741. That's not going to happen. We know that. We have also previously opposed Rivendell since 2017 for multiple reasons, notably traffic increase and safety, the number of homes, the quality of materials, indirect access to 741 via Silver Cliff, and quite frankly, a lack of trust in some of the players. A number of things have transpired in roughly 4 years since we received the announcement letter from Jim and Adam Zengel. Zengel Construction has sold a separate piece of property to the township, which is both being developed and is permitting the extension of Vienna Parkway. Zengel continues to work with the township, and we appreciate that. Ryan has reduced the number of homes to be built. They've agreed to a minimum of 80% brick or stone. They've modified their plans multiple times to comply with township recommendations. Miami Township will conduct a new traffic study after Vienna Parkway is extended, and the township commits to install traffic calming elements on Vienna Parkway if needed. In light of these good faith actions and commitments, we will no longer oppose the development of Rivendell. Now, this requires us placing trust in all three parties, Zengel, Ryan, and Miami Township. However, we do not intend to trust naively. As the President of the United States once said, trust but verify. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to come forward? Again, this is the time to be in favor of the plan.
Yeah, my name's Lou Van Antwerp, 6971 Rosecliff Place. I've watched this over the last 3 or 4 years develop. It seems to me, in the long game, this property will be developed. I'm just as happy with it as a 32-acre field, but it will be developed. And we're down to the point where it's either going to be developed under the auspices of Miami Township, or it's going to be developed under the auspices of Miamisburg. And because I know what I'd do if I were the Zengels and I couldn't get the deal through, I'd go do the annexation deal, just like they did with the Dill property over in Centerville. So I'd rather have it run under the auspices of Miami Township. So while it's not my dream solution, again, verify but trust, we assume that you will do your job and that the parties will play their roles in an upstanding manner, and we can go forward. Because I know it's going to go somewhere, and now it's a matter of who manages it. So in that case, I think we ought to move forward with it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to come forward in support of the plan?
My name is Charles Morgan, 6753 Rosita Lane, 45459. After attending several of these meetings, I can agree with some of the folks here that's going through. We have no choice, and that's fine. I think there's been a lot of work, a lot of improvements. As I sit here and listen tonight, there's a couple of things here obviously is out of our hands, and probably even out of the township, because you're saying there's water, drainage, and setters going through Montgomery County. They're going to be the final say in that, and that makes sense. And as far as you're putting the restrictions on the building codes, and we can trust them, hopefully, that they're going to follow through. I think it comes down to number 3, but number 1 in my mind, and I think many of the people here, is traffic flow and traffic control. And that's going to fall back directly on the township, all of that. And I don't think you can deny that, and hopefully we'll do something ahead of time, if you can, making sure we don't run trucks and all the traffic up and down Vienna Parkway. I realize living here, this has really become a nice little sanctuary for all of us living here, where it's blocked off and we can cross the streets with the dogs and baby carts, or what. Sometimes the baby carts have dogs in them too. But nevertheless, we'd like to protect it. And hopefully we can trust you 3 people right here, I'm looking at the 3 of you. We'll make those decisions and make sure that we are protected, and not after we open it up, because and I know once it open up, it's going to be very, very difficult to back it up and start doing some things that will control the traffic. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other proponents wishing to come forward?
Janet Clark, 7206 Fawn Willow Court, Dayton. Just a couple of thoughts I was wondering about. Probably maybe even in 17 when we had these meetings, the township was saying, oh, we're probably not going to be able to extend Vienna Parkway because that's $2 million for 675 feet, and the township doesn't have the money. Now, we're going to borrow money, and so we're going to be paying interest on this loan and everything to pay back the $2 million. Well, one of the big beneficiaries of having this extended, or about the only one, is Ryan Homes. So why aren't they paying to extend Vienna Parkway? Because it's really only to get people in so they can build their houses and make a profit. So why is the taxpayers paying for this extension and this loan to help Ryan Homes build houses? Just kind of wondering about that. And there was an article in the paper, February 16th, in the Sunday paper, and it was talking about, you know, all the details, saying that, excuse me, that the parcel sizes, the lots are going to average 16,862 square feet. Well, that's almost a half an acre. Well, when we look at the chart, it's really, their average is going to be about a fifth of an acre. So I don't know why it was so overblown, how big these lots and everything are going to be when that's so far off. It's not true, because the only way they came up with that is they came up with, okay, we have our 32 acres to build our houses on. Well, it comes out to be the 16,000. Well, what they need to do, they just took out for land. So it says in the paper they're going to have 6.62 acres for parkland. Now, is that parkland? Then in addition to that is the land for like the retention ponds. In addition to that is the buffer. In addition is, what about the streets? And do they have sidewalks? I don't know if they have sidewalks. But well, they've figured in 16,000 for each lot size. They're not figuring anything. Retention ponds, sidewalks, driveways, streets, buffer zones, none of that's figured. So when the people read this in the paper, it looks like, oh, we have almost half-acre lots. But they're not, they're a fifth of an acre. So it's not, it wasn't portrayed properly, I don't think, in the article. So there's not 16,000, there's not 13,000, it's way down. Time you take out the streets and everything else, it's going to be used and not used for lot sizes. And also, when they talk about buffer zones, that would be like 25 feet behind the lots. Now, that would be, let's say, those that back up to Mohawk Trail. So the house, then, if it's 50 feet from the back of the house to the property line.
Ma'am, your
then
3
the
minutes are
property
up.
line- Pardon?
Your 3 minutes are up. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. You know, does that count? So those people that have a buffer zone behind them, do they get to take and use that as their lot? So that's their lot and clear back to the back property line? Or is there anything that kind of breaks up this buffer zone? Or they just have a bigger backyard that they could put the swing sets and everything way back at the back property? Just some questions I was wondering about.
Thank you for your thoughts. Anyone else wishing to come forward in favor of the plan? Okay, we will close the comment period on those proponents. We will now hear from any opponents of the plan. Anyone opposing the plan, please come forward, state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak. We'll call you neutral.
Diane Wood, 7371 Mohawk Trail. I think I was here 2 years ago in a meeting and I brought up, I'm not sure exactly, you guys keep stating some things that the homeowners association will take care of. I just wonder what those are, because I used to live over on Rosina in Miamisburg. We had a homeowners association, 3 officers. As officers moved out of the area, they ended up not being replaced. No meetings were held, no dues were collected, no nothing. It was completely defunct. So nothing. How do you know that they're going to keep the homeowners association and they will definitely take care of what they say they're going to take care of? Because that could fall back on the township. So just be careful of that. And I wish the frontages were bigger too. My first house was 1,250 square feet, had a 75-foot frontage. My house on Rosina was less than 2,000 square feet. It was 2-story with a basement, and it was on like an 85 frontage. So I wish they were that, so that when I drive down through that street, I don't feel like I'm smothering to death.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to come forward in opposition of the plan?
Hi, my name is Jim Tier. I live on Mohawk Trail Road, 7249. My concerns, first of all, I'm not opposed to them having their homes now. They've done a lot of improvement from the first time I was here. My biggest worry is for the first five homes on Mohawk Trail Road from Fox Run up to Vienna Park is not in Vienna Park. We're the older homes in that neighborhood, the first 5 again. If you take the first 5 on that section 1 that's showing up there, and on the very bottom, there's 5 homes and then Vienna Park. Vienna Park, I just learned, has 2 storm drain receptacles on that very side that I live on. However, that's in Vienna Park. That's not the last 5 homes where we live. What are they going to do about that? You can't tie in up here and expect the other half to profit from it. So that is my big concern, and I hope that you, as our trustees, everybody in here, support us on this and make sure that is handled and thought of in the process of getting approval. These people say they'll do it, and which they probably intend to, but nothing's better than being on paper. You know that. So we need that as citizens that lives on Mohawk Trail Road. Please consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to come forward in opposition of the plan?
My name is Joyce Zeck, and I live at Bellsburg Drive, the corner of Mad River in Bellsburg. And I'm sort of late in getting here and learning more about this. I too read the article in the paper the other Sunday, and I laid it down and put it aside till I could check on different facts. So that's what I've been doing this last week. I first of all went up to Vienna Parkway, and I went to see where the new street is supposed to come in from 741. And then today I went out and like one gentleman mentioned about Fox Run, I went down Fox Run Road, and I definitely agree that is a narrow, narrow road. I'm not aware of, when I say this, if whether or not they're going to put that Fox Run Road all the way through to the new area. And like I say, and to me is, like I say, I live on the corner of Bellsburg and Mad River. I've been there for 50 years. So when you're talking about traffic, that is my concern. I know what traffic turns into Mad River, into Bellsburg now. I can see the people who is normally, and when people turn into Bellsburg, they go up to Mohawk and they go straight down to Vienna Park. Now, so you're adding more homes up on behind Vienna Park. So, and there's like, you're saying to me that there's only 2 entrances to the new development. That's not going to work, because I'm going to have more traffic on Mad River, off of Mad River Road to Bellsburg. Now, I know Mr. Zingle said something about Bellsburg and how many cars, I think, travel a day. I don't remember what he said. I couldn't quite hear it. But when I have company at my home, people stand there and they say, you got a lot of traffic going up and down your road. I do have. And also the other bad thing is, so to me is, people are going to be using Bellsburg to go down up to Mohawk and go down to Fox Run and make another left into Fox Run, or they're going to go down to Vienna Park as they do now and go into the new area. Plus the fact is, on Mad River Road, like I said, I've been there for 50 years, and the intersection of Bellsburg and Mad River, a lot of people do a lot of turnarounds in the center of the road. I mean, a lot of people don't want, they go get on Mad River Road and they just go down the road. They don't really stop. And sometimes it's a close call because of a car stopping in front of them. So I just think there's more traffic coming in, and that's what I'm asking you to address, is more traffic and making allowances or something like that for it. There has to be something else new. And here again, when you get up and you're going to go down to
Ma'am,
Mohawk.
your 3 minutes are up, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to come forward in opposition? No, seeing none, I will close the public comment period for opponents, and I will make a motion to close the public hearing for zoning case 024-2020.
Second the motion.
Any discussion?
Mr. Morris.
Aye.
Mr. Culp.
Aye.
Mr. Posey.
Aye.
I appreciate everybody coming forward and giving their testimony, both the applicant giving their time, having worked with staff and taken this to the zoning board. I appreciate all those who've come, taken the time to speak as a proponent and as an opponent of the plan. And I think one thing before we vote is crystal clear, and I would hope that each and every one here, whether you were for or against this plan, regardless of what happens next, will hold us accountable. That's why we're here. So I was given the luxury of being a trustee, and you put your trust in me, and I will do what you asked me to do. So thank you for that. With that, I will make a motion. I will make a motion to approve resolution 024-2020. Therefore, be it resolved, the Miami Town, a resolution to adopt a plan development regulation amendment for Rivendell under zoning case 393-027 for land zone PD1 planned residential district. Therefore, be it resolved, the Miami Township trustees approves the plan development regulation amendment under zoning case 393-017 and upholds the zoning commission recommendation.
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion?
Mr. Morris.
Aye.
Mr. Culp.
Aye.
Mr. Posey.
Aye.
Do the department heads have any comments? Does anyone have any questions for the department heads? Elected official comments, Mr. Newell.
I have none.
Mr. Posey?
Yeah, I wanted to reiterate your comment at the close of the public session today. I came to this board after a lot of substantial work had been done on the proposal before the board today. And I did. I wanted to thank the members of the neighborhood, the applicants, the staff, the zoning commission, and the other members of the board of trustees for their efforts in this process. As someone coming to this board after the substantial work had been done at every stage, it is truly an honor to see how effective American government can be when the participants are so active. Effective local governance requires work and participation like this, and the level of effort and engagement on behalf of all the parties present today is why the American form of government has worked better than all others. Thank you.
Mr. Culp?
I have none.
Yeah, I would reiterate what Mr. Posey just said and remind everyone, whether you're in the audience today or listening online, this is the first phase. There have got to be new development plans got to come forward. We have to see new stormwater plans. I like that Mr. Zengel commented that you're going to have a private engineering firm come up with a plan that's going to be looked at by the county engineering firm. But that doesn't mean we here at the township won't also get resources involved to review those plans ourselves. I'm not going to put all my faith and trust in the engineer hired by Mr. Zengel. I'm not going to put all my faith and trust in the Montgomery County engineer. I'm going to make sure that we look at those plans ourselves because drainage is clearly important, and I appreciate the gentleman's comment about those homes that are not in Vienna Woods. This development plan for drainage will address all drainage issues for all homes that abut this property. Traffic has been a major issue. I want to clarify the one presentation mentioned some facts that weren't quite purely accurate and things that she had read, and one of them is this idea that this road is necessarily $2 million. We were, as a township, were able to acquire that land for $1 million, or for $1. We've subsequently sold 8 acres for $1.8 million. So that's money in the bank that we didn't have when this all started. The road itself is being put out to bid, and we expect it may cost upwards of $1 million to build the road. the additional funds will be used for infrastructure investments in and around the neighborhood, the traffic calming, the traffic studies. So this is a financial win for this township, and it is not costing the residents and taxpayers anything to build that road, because we acquired the land for $1 and we sold it for 1.8. So this has been very good, and that's a tribute to this administration for coming up and working out that deal. I will ask questions about how you hold homeowner associations accountable, because I've lived in neighborhoods where there was an HOA and nobody took care of it and it didn't really do anything. I read the HOA plans for this development and they are lengthy. They're putting a lot of requirements on these homes on what they have to maintain and uphold. But I need to study a little more on how you hold someone accountable if no one runs the thing and they don't collect any dues, what rights we have. So I'll look into that, and I'll be happy to report back to the community on that. So with that, at 7:15, I will make a motion to adjourn this meeting. Thank you all for coming.